everyone, I'm Sonic98, bringing you the latest on video games, TV news, and more. For today's review, we're going to be looking at episode 11 of Transformers Robots in the Sky Season 2 Graduation Exercises. Now, if you remember from a couple of videos back, this episode title was originally going to be called Outstanding, but for some reason it got changed to Graduation Exercise at the last second. Don't ask me, I have no idea why. So this episode, I feel like, just like Portals, is basically a perfect episode. They need to have this character Transformers Prime to make it good. It was just still a great episode on its own. I really liked, specifically though, I really liked how this episode gave more, he gave the spotlight to Jetstorm and Slipstream, who to me are like some of my favorite characters on the show. So we're gonna go over what made this episode so awesome. So this episode is a Team Optimus episode. So it starts off with Optimus, Windblade, Drift, and Sideswipe all driving along a highway heading towards one of Windblade's another supply caches to check to see if it's been under attack by Decepticons. In this, Optimus says how he's back to fully fighting shape. So this is kind of as we've seen back in the beginning of Season 2, Optimus was really kind of weak and almost maybe a bit even weaker than Bumblebee. But now we've seen that he's finally able to get back into fighting shape, and that he can. Well, he's still, I can clearly say he's not as strong as he was back in Transformers Prime. He's definitely improved, so that he's not as weak as he was back in the beginning of the season. So anyway, even also during this, Jetstorm and Slipstream are trying to tell Drift how they feel like they don't need him anymore, that they can fight by themselves and think their own. But Drift says they still have much to learn. This is kind of something that's been going on not just in this season, but basically the entire show. Now this is the first time it's being brought up in Season 2. It's brought up a lot though in Season 1 before. Which basically, Drift has a lot of kind of overprotective of them. We saw this back in Season 1, Episode 17. One of our mini-cons is missing when Jetstorm runs away because he feels like he's not good enough to be taught by Drift. And then we see it again in some of the Season 2 Robots in the Sky shorts with Jetstorm and Slipstream tracking down the Cyclone mini-cons. So it's really nice to go and see more of these more interactions between Drift and his mini-cons. Shortly after that, we get introduced to a new Decepticon. His name is Stockade. Now, Stockade. I feel is a pretty interesting Decepticon. He's kind of like your stereotypical army general, and it's kind of funny to see him basically lead a whole army of mini-cons. Not just for every single Decepticon we've seen in Robots in the Sky Season 2 so far, with some exceptions, they all had mini-con partners. We've got Overload with Backtrack and Ransack. We had Disc with those two mini-cons, we forget their names. We had Quillfire with Back and Forth, and now we have Stockade with a whole army of mini-cons. So basically, another thing to notice is that Stockade is actually voiced by Greg Berger. Now, for any hardcore Transformers fan, they'll know that Greg Berger was actually the original voice for Grimlock in the Transformers G1 cartoon. So it's really interesting to see Grimlock, two Grimlocks are the same thing, because Grimlock, Robots in the Sky Grimlock is the latest episode. We technically have G1 Grimlock in the form of Stockade. After Stockade's introduced, he decides to go and launch a surprise attack on the Autobots while they're investigating the Windblade's cache. They all end up fighting him. When Drift tells Jetstorm to help them, but instead they decide to go and take on a bunch of the mini-cons to prove that they're good enough. And while they succeed, they ended up having Drift ends up getting shot by some of the mini-cons, like a giant cannon or something. He ends up getting injured or something, so he can't fight anymore. And he ends up having Drift ends up having to lock himself in Windblade's cache, and then the whole group gets split up from there. Sideswipe gets stuck with Drift's Jetstorm and Slipstream, and then Optimus gets stuck in a vault with Windblade. So basically, the whole thing's basically kind of like those old bank robbing movies when you have the main character stuck in a vault and basically thinking of a way to get out almost the entirety of the movie. This is basically what this is. So we basically have Optimus and Windblade. They're stuck in the vault. They're trying to figure out a way out while preventing all the mini-cons from getting in. And Drift and Sideswipe and the mini-cons are trying to do the same thing too. And so we get this little thing where we get some nice bonding between Sideswipe and the mini-cons, in which he teaches them to they still have to respect Drift a bit, but that he believes that they should be able to act on their own. Now I kind of like how Sideswipe's taking kind of a big brother approach to Jetstorm and Slipstream. We saw this a little bit back in the Season 2 short, The Power of the Dibs, when Sideswipe was just joking around with them and teaching them all about how important dibs are. And so this really comes into play later, which I'm going to get into right now. So after this, after a little bit of thinking, Stockade ends up trying to break into Drift's cache, so that puts pressure on Sideswipe and the Minicons to get out of their they're not a vault net per se, but just like a building. So in this, Sideswipe eventually learns that apparently the Jetstorm Slipstream can attach to any Minicon, not just Drift. So using this to advantage, Sideswipe ends up attaching Jetstorm Slipstream to his back and tricks the army of Minicons into coming into his room as a fake surrender, but then breaks them out. He and the Minicons end up single-handedly taking down most of Stockade's army before breaking out Windblade and Optimus. And so then they all get on this big fight. Optimus ends up playing Stockade while Windblade and Sideswipe deal with the Minicon army, and then Jetstorm and Slipstream try to break Drift out. Meanwhile, the army Stockade's Minicons finally get into Drift's cache, but then he's able to use all the weapons inside, like a rocket launcher and a couple laser guns to pull them back. Eventually, Drift gets back with them. Optimus ends up beating Stockade, and they end up taking him back to Scrapyard, but not before Grimlock comes out of nowhere and is finally finished fixing the Brown Bridge, and so they all decide to head back to the Scrapyard, and the whole team is back together again. And so that was my review of Transformers Robots in the Sky Season 2, Episode 11, Graduation Exercises. Now, I know this plot seems kind of like simple, but I feel like I just really like the interaction. This episode was really good on character development. While it was kind of light for Optimus and Windblade because we kind of got most of their connection back in Episode 5 with Cover Me, this episode focuses more on Drift, Slipstream, Jetstorm, and Sideswipe, and I was really glad to see that. And Stockade was a great villain. I'm hoping we'll see more of him in a possible Season 3 if it does happen, since it doesn't seem like he'll be coming back anytime soon. So if I had to give rates Graduation Exercise, I'd probably give it a 9.5 out of 10. The only con being, like I said, aside from the character development, there wasn't really anything special about this, but other than that, it was great development-wise. Optimus vs. Stockade was great, the interactions between Sideswipe, Jetstorm, and Slipstream were great, and so on. And that'll be it for this review. I'll be back soon with Part 1 of the Transformers Robots in the Sky Season 2 finale, Decepticon Island Part 1. If you like this review, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys later.